Aloha y'all, Daniel Aaron here, your guide to vibrant living. Something that surprises people often about me, and really, I think there are many things that sparked me to do what I do in the world, which I think of simply as fostering transformation, right? The art of vibrant living is about overcoming our previous limitations, our conceived limitations, becoming who we want, becoming what we know is possible, that is our destiny. And part of what sparked me into that is that I was a fat boy, to put it simply. I struggled all my early life with being overweight. Now, my father was overweight, my mother was overweight, my brothers and my sisters, they were all overweight. This was, for me, it was in the 70s, 1970s. Yes, I am that ancient. And so what fat was then was, it's a little bit different than the way we think of it now. Because, yay, America, number one in obesity in the world. We've grown into a whole new level of fat. So I wasn't fat like obese, though I was always pudgy, overweight. And even more importantly than my actual weight or shape was how I thought of myself, what I believed about myself, what we would call self-image. And distorted, yes, in some ways it was a distorted self-image because I wasn't as fat as I thought. It wasn't as big a problem as I thought. It was not ideal, yet nonetheless, I was still fine. I was still a good athlete. And the problem with distorted self-image and being overweight and worried about it is it consumes our thoughts, our attention, right? It's so self-limiting, self-sabotaging. Right? I remember this one moment in particular, and I'd tried a lot of things. I'd watched my mother and my father. Not so much my father, he didn't seem to care that much about his fat. But my mother and my sisters, they had tried every kind of diet over and over again, and they'd lose weight, and they'd gain weight, and they'd lose more weight, and they'd gain more weight, and up and down, and such a nightmare for them. Me too, though. I tried it. As a kid, I was like, okay, I'm going to go on this diet, and I remember my mom bought me a weight bench, and I was going to do weights, but that didn't seem to work, and I just struggled, mostly because I hadn't learned how to take care of myself, how to eat well, how to move well. So there was one point when I was at my father's house. My parents were divorced, and I was spending the summer with my father in Maine. And we were doing what we often do on a Sunday afternoon, which is we were watching baseball on TV. My father was sitting on the sofa over here. He was probably on about his fourth or fifth scotch at that point, so he was already getting a little woozy. And I remember this moment, he got up, and he was going to the kitchen for some reason, kind of a little bit, not so great. And he was out in the kitchen, so I'm sitting there on the sofa, not the sofa, a big armchair. It had these arms like this wide. And I'm like sitting back like this, and I had my leg up on the arm. And I had picked up it wasn't a remote control. I was reaching over and clicking the buttons. We didn't have remote controls yet. And as I was doing that, I looked over at my leg, which was, cocked up on the armchair, the arm of the chair. And so my thigh was pressing down into it. I kid you not. I looked at my thigh and I thought, that's gross. Because, what happens when you take a body part, especially one that has some fat, which most do, and you put it onto something, it just kind of goes, flattens out. So I looked at my thigh. I was probably 13 years old, maybe 12, and I looked at it, and it just looked like this undefined blob of white flesh. And I thought to myself, that's gross, and I am powerless to change it. I will never change it. I will always suffer for it. It was a crushing moment for me, right? Now, as you can guess and imagine, it didn't turn out to be that way. It didn't turn out to be true. What changed for me was a few years later, main thing, I enrolled in a judo class, judo, martial arts. And in that, I had a great teacher, Mr. James Takamori, little guy about this tall, fierce, teacher. And he told me, he let me know, you need to change. And he pushed me to work out. And those first workouts, by first I mean like the first year of those workouts, I poured sweat off of me and I struggled and I drank too much water. And somehow though, under his care and tutelage, I made it through. And in my later high school years, I actually started to shift my body. And honestly though, my mindset didn't change for many more years still, because I still saw myself as fat, right? So the reason I tell you this is because whatever, your story won't be that story. Well, your story will be, if you're human, that something's wrong. I'm not tall enough, short enough, fat enough. Nobody wants to be fatter necessarily, but I'm too skinny, I'm too fat, I'm not smart enough, I'm too old. These are unresourceful beliefs, and when we have them, they perpetuate, they reinforce whatever it is that we don't want, right? So for me, that was a crushing moment when I was 12 years old on that armchair. And it lodged in me. And it took years for me to come out of that. Now in retrospect, right, having spent the last 30 years developing myself as a yogi, I could say, wow, so shame that boy, he wasted so much energy, so much potential in those years. And of course, that's part of my journey. That's what I needed to do. And I'm grateful for it now because it's given me the compassion and understanding as a teacher and a coach to know what it's like when we're struggling with something, when we believe in that limitation, we believe that's going to be the way it is for us forever. It doesn't have to be. It's not our destiny. In fact, it won't be. The question though is, when will we release that limitation and become who we are meant to be? Doesn't matter. We'll do it sooner or later. And the sooner, the more fun it becomes. So, with that, I shall leave you. If this was interesting, helpful, innocuous, please share it. Like it, subscribe. The more vibrant beings we have in the world, the more beings we have who are overcoming previous limitations, thriving into their potential, the more fun it is for all of us on this planet. So y'all, with that, thank you so much for tuning in, for being part of this, for letting me share. Thanks for your dedication to the art of vibrant living. Aloha.